What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stochastic here on the Stochastic YouTube channel, coming to you with a Week 7 edition of NFL DraftKings Reignmakers. Head down below if you haven't already. Get yourself that free starter pack. Yeah, you can start off with any of the top tier quarterbacks that you're really looking for. Get you a stack, automatically going to get you a stack to be able to join the fray over at Reignmakers. We've had a couple of 100K core contests the last couple of weeks. Here, we go back to the standard stuff, and I'm going to talk a little bit of game theory on today's program, as well as talk about some of my top targets for the main Week 7 slate here that we're looking at over for DraftKings Reignmakers. Of course, here at Stochastic as well, as I pull this up. Oh, that's BFF. There we go. We have NFL DFS projections that I'm going to be utilizing and talking through some of what we're looking at. Obviously, Jalen Hurts, he is on that Sunday night slate, which there are standalone slates for the showdown slates. Patrick Mahomes, the highest projected there, but has that superstar status. But we have the NFL Reignmakers NFL projections. Good stuff here. I'm going to be using this alongside myself. That's a weird way of saying it. While we build them out, of course, there is big UFC. I've already built out on my UFC contest for this week. We have NFL. So many great things in the Reignmaker streets. Going to be awesome. But I want to start with a little game theory. And we're going to build out the core contests. I have a couple of lineups that I've already pre-made because, again, I can do whatever I really want on this show as long as, well, it's going to help you. And I want to talk through my favorite targets to get to, like I always do: quarterback, running back, wide receiver / tight end, and flex. We're looking at 5 players in your lineup in the Reignmaker streets. Again, starter pack down below. Take advantage of it here. You can jump in contests for free. You have beginner training where everybody's going to get something back from that in those contests where you use just your starter cards. But I'm looking at the core contest, 1K to first, and single entry as well, $500 to first. I'm going to take one of these lineups. I'm going to move it to the single entry. And then I've got a couple of guaranteed contests going. I've got a couple of the Thursday to Monday contests going here right now. If you go to the live streets, why did Garrett Higo have to leave? But anyway, I've got golf lineups. I've got football lineups. But looking at these right now, there's some game theory that I'm going to utilize this week in this contest and in this contest alongside these main contests. Now, what am I getting at? Well, I think the most underutilized thing that you can do with DraftKings Reignmakers is take advantage of the lineups that do really good on the early session of games and then being able to properly utilize your cards into the late session. I'm going to teach you a little bit about how I go about doing that, how I've taken down, I had $1,000, $2,000 wins in the Reignmakers NFL streets last season. This year, I haven't had a big hit in the NFL streets yet. UFC has been very profitable for me. Really enjoyed my time over in the UFC streets here. But as I am looking at these two contests, well, they're the same contest, these two lineups, there's one piece that really matters to me on each side of this. Now, Kenneth Walker and Josh Jacobs are my running backs. Kenneth Walker does not start until the afternoon window of games. And so as we click on this, you can see Stephon Diggs. He's the only piece of the early window of games that I have going. He starts up. He's one of the best core cards you can possibly have in the entire game. Currently, averaging 25.8 fantasy points per game. He's going for $19.70 on the core marketplace. I got him for a little bit cheaper. So again, I could sell him right now for a profit as well as just keep playing him forever and ever. Amen. That was a Ben Folds shout out, by the way. But as we're looking at Kenneth Walker, my friends, he's one of the top running back cards you can get to because David Montgomery is officially ruled out for this game. Now, if you want to try to do a little bit of a buy low session here, $4 for him, that seems pretty good. But Jahmyr Gibbs sitting at $4.25. We're going to have to buy one of those right now, aren't we? This is going to be a huge conversation piece. I don't know what to make of some of this coach speak that we have going right now. I got to check my location. Real estate and DFS, location. And also location of the Monday night game for the Vikings. My parents will be in attendance, and thank God they don't play till Monday, so my Sunday won't be ruined. But David Montgomery out opens up an entire world of opportunity. Now, it was going to be a difficult matchup here in Baltimore on the road. The 5-1 Detroit Lions been playing pretty darn good football. but they've been establishing the run every possible time that they can. And now without David Montgomery, you're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs getting a lot of this workload, but this creates an interesting balance here at the top. And I want to talk about some of my favorite running back targets. Another guy that I'm going to be buying a lot of cards with and rotating between is Aaron Jones. I think he's going to be closer to a full capacity workload type play than what people are projecting. And I'm curious what we're projecting him for here at the moment. But he's taking on the Denver Broncos, where if you look at the Denver Broncos, they're in the bottom, they're 30th and 32nd, respectively, against the rush and against the pass in the NFL so far this season under most metrics, but that's specifically against yardage. Of course, there is that outlier football game they played, the 70-point absolute murder that took place in Miami. Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. People remember that guy? I do. But anyway, Kenneth Walker, now $11.15. He is your premier running back to get on the slate. As you work down, you have Jonathan Taylor still into timeshare with Zach Moss, even though he got paid. Jonathan Taylor got paid. Just no confusion there. As you're working your way down, if I just take this out, Zach Moss, $9.45. What are we even doing here? Austin Eckler, $8.20 in that highest total game of the entire slate, $8.20 for him as a superstar. I don't mind using your superstar there. I'm going to utilize it a little bit differently because I think the wide receiver position is very interesting. $4.95 for Saquon Barkley. That's fine too. But this is the other dude that I'm just trying to split exposure with in multiple lineups. And here's how I'm going to go about doing that. Let's click on this. Show my cards at the top yet again. Kenneth Walker, Stephon Diggs, and then who else did I have in this lineup? Actually, let's just go to my contest and see it as it comes back to life. Here we go. So I have Keenan Allen, obvious smash. He's been a top 5 wide receiver in football from a fantasy perspective and a real life perspective. Cooper Kupp. That is who I'm going to be utilizing my superstar with if I'm going to play Stafford in this lineup. But Kenneth Walker in the afternoon, this is just Stephon Diggs active, and this is just Josh Jacobs active. Now, you will very much notice I do not plan on playing Kenny Pickett, Tyler Lockett, Jaden Reed, and Rashee Rice in this lineup if Josh Jacobs goes completely nuclear. I hope that makes sense why. It's called late swap. It's probably the most underutilized thing when it comes to playing DFS, but in the Reignmaker streets especially, I have not seen a lot of people take advantage of this strategy, and I've been utilizing it nonstop. Obviously, it doesn't matter in the UFC streets, when you're talking about, like, no matter what, you have all these lineups, they're going to lock and it is done. For golf, you lock and it is done. But football, it's the only one with late swap. And it makes me think that people aren't necessarily thinking and strategizing with just 5 cards to manage. That's a lot fewer than you're looking at in a traditional DFS lineup with a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and a defense. This is much easier to manage, and it also matters that you get the nuts early if you're going to be pivoting into other plays later, depending on what cards you have. Now, I have Stafford, I have Kupp. Talked about buying a ton of Kupp. That ended up working out very nicely for everybody. I have a lot of Kupp. Hopefully you have a lot of Cooper Kupp as well. I was able to sell high here after the end of the last couple of weeks, and I was able to buy a couple of other ones that I wanted to get, the Stephon Diggs. I have a bunch in the rare contest that I showed earlier where I'm going to mix and match based on how I feel my lineups are doing after the early window of games. But Stephon Diggs, he's the only active piece of this lineup starting at 1 p.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific. Josh Jacobs is the only piece of this lineup starting at 1 p.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific. I will move all of these cards down here if Josh Jacobs goes completely nuclear. Now, there are a lot of worlds where Josh Jacobs and Kenneth Walker are both the guys that you might need, but you're talking about such a ridiculous hypothetical there when you're talking about a flex play that I can play wide receivers at, and you get the entire gamut to work with. Running back is such an individual position. You only have to play one And I am far more inclined to stack up wide receivers in Reignmakers specifically. I think cost-wise, you're looking at Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, all these guys. They have so much utility. You can move them around. If they have early or late start times, you can have more maneuverability. But running back, I really do try to just kind of like set it and forget it when it comes to my best lineups. And that's where I think this week, having Josh Jacobs and Kenneth Walker with no David Montgomery, with no Christian McCaffrey on the main slate, with no Derrick Henry on the main slate, lots of guys that I think from a running back position, we have access to get to. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs, I just bought because I'm going to be mixing him into some lineups here as we go along too. Probably going to get some Austin Eckler to join the fray. Not the band, just this. But we're going to put Kenneth Walker back in with the, boom. Make sure you have your later start times, wide receiver, tight end. Just gives you more maneuverability. And then let's say that my lineups are doing terrible. Let's say Josh Jacobs puts up an absolute dud in this early window of games. I can keep this pretty much the same because Kenny Pickett, I don't really value him. But let's say quarterbacks do completely terrible. And I'm looking at a late window. Jared Goff plays terrible. Lamar Jackson doesn't play well. I have a Stafford, rare that I'll utilize somewhere. Mayfield, Minshew. I have a lot of lineups to build out. Have some Brian Hoyer now that he's starting for the Vegas Raiders. We'll talk about him in a second. But I will be able to move around these pieces. And in the event that I want to completely punt and it's like, I do want to use Kenny Pickett in a different lineup, go to the cheapest card that exists on the board, 80 cents for Blaine Gabbert. Simply buy his card, plug him in, and then utilize that money elsewhere. There's a 54%. I don't even know what is this? Max Duggan action for the Chargers backup. Got hit stick there, 64 cents. Buy a cheapie. And these cards, if somebody gets hurt at any point in the season, they could gain a ton of value, or you just simply eat the 60 cents in order to switch out your card to play it somewhere else. That is so underutilized in the Reignmaker streets. Anyway, we continue on our merry way. I know you guys are looking for plays, so let's clear the board here and let's talk through my favorite targets to get to here for week 7 as we're looking at it. Running back position, we obviously covered a lot, but we're going to start at quarterback. You have Herbert, you have Allen, you have Mahomes. This is a really good week considering there's only 10 games on this main slate to possibly use your superstar as a quarterback. I think Mahomes and Herbert, you're talking about the only total. If you go to PFF here at the top, 48 for a total. You have Denver and Green Bay. That's moved to 45. Aaron Jones news probably helped out a little bit. Arizona, 44.5. Pittsburgh, 44. There has never been a better week for late swap for Reignmakers than this one because this window of games, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 43, 37. Got back up here. 37.5. The Giants in Washington, 40, 41, 37.5. All the games with the beautiful totals, or at least the better than normal totals, are going on in the late window of games. So game stack yourself up to the late session and utilize some pieces, just one piece here, one piece there. And if a piece goes off, you can then swap into the best possible stacks that I think all exist in the afternoon window. Whew, good stuff. Anyway, my preferred target amongst these three that we're looking at right now is Josh Allen going up against New England. It's such an easy stack. Him, Stephon Diggs. I think they're just the best single stack that you're going to run into on a week in, week out basis. Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, probably a pretty good one too. But I do like getting exposure to the Josh Allen side of things. New England's defense, well, they're giving up the 5th least amount of fantasy points to the quarterback position. This is Josh Allen we're talking about. Yeah, it's in New England. They also lost a cornerback that I find to be extremely good in Christian Gonzalez. He was a rookie out of Oregon. He shut down Tyreek Hill in New England. It was wild to watch. Just saying, that's going to be a bummer miss. But Lamar Jackson sitting here at $7.89. There are 4 superstar quarterbacks that we have. I think it's just the 4 that exist. If I have to build out with one who's not going to be a superstar, I'm going to Matt Stafford here with the Rams. I love him and Cooper Kupp. Talked about it before where Cooper Kupp, hey, he had cheap cards. Maybe he's healthier than people think. And sure enough, you got the value instantly I said maybe we wait a couple of weeks and then we can utilize him in the same role that he had with the Rams forever. Well, that happened just instantly. So good times. Good times for everybody involved. But Matthew Stafford, $8.30. He's going for cheaper than the Superstar Jackson, but that way you can use a superstar spot in one of these other places, which I kind of prefer most of the time. Not that Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, that these aren't good cards to get to. I've had iterations of them this season, kind of traded them in, bought them, gotten rid of, but Baker Mayfield against Atlanta, I'll just use him as kind of a transfer piece if he plays. Again, they're in the early window of games there in Tampa Bay this week, so have to utilize him a little bit earlier. But one card that I want to at least, where did he go? He's further down here. I'm entertaining PJ Walker against Indy. $3.32. I think there's a real chance that we don't see Deshaun Watson. Like, I would probably set the line at like 15%. There's a real chance we don't see Deshaun Watson the rest of the season. And as fun as DTR was, Dorian Thompson Robinson was in the preseason, I think PJ Walker ends up being the guy the rest of the way. I mean, it could be a volatile situation. He doesn't play well. They could go back to DTR, but he did not look good in that one start. And PJ Walker goes out and beats San Francisco. Didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot to make it work, but is what it is. As I'm looking at PJ Walker, though, there is no question whatsoever that $3.32 to possibly have a guy who's attached to one of the better defenses in football. There's a couple of primetime games coming down the pipeline. Again, looking at schedule matters here for Cleveland. And if Deshaun Watson's out for a long time, $3.32 is as cheap as you're going to find for a quarterback who is starting in the NFL. Now, Deshaun Watson with that contract, with everything else, if he comes back immediately, he's locked into that role. But you see Tyrod Taylor there, $3.75. You see Mac Jones, $3.12. You see Daniel Jones, $3.19, which I think is a great buy if he ends up playing against Washington. I know there's no offensive line for the Giants, but it is what it is. PJ Washington could end up starting a lot more than you think. I don't think Deshaun Watson is close. I think you're probably looking at him missing another 2-3 weeks. That's probably the favorite. But again, there's a non-zero chance he's out for a long period of time. And PJ Walker seems to be the guy that's now going to be trusted going forward. So wanted to throw him out there. Running back position, we covered it. I'm in love with Josh Jacobs. I'm very much in love with Aaron Jones, just buying shares of him constantly here. Rachaad White, I'm overinvested in. It is what it is. And Jahmyr Gibbs, just got a share of him. I think we do want to have some Jahmyr Gibbs in our life this week. He's going to be super popular in DFS. Don't want to sleep on Austin Eckler, considering he's the only superstar piece that's really, I mean, Saquon Barkley is going to be very low owned and underutilized in DFS, but well, not underutilized, probably properly utilized. It's just such a bad football team. And with this offensive line, I mean, Saquon Barkley has talent, but hard for me to want to get to him as opposed to playing Josh Jacobs against Vegas. You get Brian Hoyer out there, so you're not going to run into the 11 targets that he got alongside Aiden O'Connell there in week 4 against the Chargers, but back-to-back wins against Green Bay and New England. He plays so many damn snaps. Now, Jerome Ford is somebody to keep an eye on because Nick Chubb, or not Nick Chubb, he's out for the season, but Kareem Hunt is not available here. And Kareem Hunt is somebody that I think without a doubt, you want to get yourself a little bit of Jerome Ford in your life if he ends up being ruled out. So pay very close attention to that, my friends. Pay very close attention to it and get yourself a little bit of that love in your life. But as I am looking at this, the rest of the running back position, it is dust down here. Absolute dust. If you're trying to win this week, it's so hard to find a running back below Ramondre Stevenson, $2.24. Well, Jahmyr Gibbs, but that doesn't really count. I hope you understand the difference there. Jonathan Taylor, superstar running back, but splitting carries there at the moment. Roschon Johnson, I bought a bunch of shares once. Hopefully he can get himself back into the mix here. That'd be great. But we go to the wide receiver position where it is very clear cut to me that you get Cooper Kupp and you play him in everything. I have him in everything right now. He's in those Thursday lineups. He's in this lineup. the one that we shuffled through, and I'll probably buy a couple more shares here because at $11 for the superstar, he's the guy I want. And there are so many good top tier receivers. Allen, you saw that I had a couple shares there. Stephon Diggs, Amon-Ra St. Brown against Baltimore, I love. Don't love DJ Moore. They're starting a guy who played D2 college football last year. But friends, Hulk slam. Hulk slam. Like, I'm going to have so much Devontae Adams in my Reignmakers lineups if they check my location and everything works out okay. I'm going to have so much Devontae Adams, it's just ridiculous. The squeaky wheel narrative is alive and well. Brian Hoyer is starting this game instead of Aiden O'Connell. The main reason is that they are going to feed Devontae Adams into oblivion. This is just a guy that you want to get tons of. I would be shocked, barring injury, on Sunday, if Devontae Adams doesn't have a ceiling game. If you don't capitalize on it this week and buy him a lot at $5.10, $5.18, I'm going to buy another one, you are going to regret it. Oh, where did the 518 one go? There it is. You're going to regret it. So just get a ton of Devontae Adams in your life. You just want it. You just need it. You just got to have it. Jacoby Myers, again, I have some of him. Maybe I will play a little bit of Brian Hoyer. I know I have my Hoyer card just sitting there on the layaway. I can go to him. I can go to him with Myers and do a little bit of a double there. But I'm absolutely obsessed. You have $11, $17.25, $19.70, $12.50. If Devontae Adams has the game that I think he potentially could against the Chicago Bears on Sunday, oh my gosh, he's going to be $10, $12. You're going to profit just from getting that as well as the double dip because you slam dunk windmill slammed it in this spot. So let's do that. Amari Cooper, again, PJ Walker, not the best situation for him there. Last chance for Marquise Brown going with Josh Gibbs, although Kyler Murray, we've seen some fantasy potential from him there, but primarily looking at the top end of the wide receiver board. If you're trying to build out the best possible lineups for this week, you are staying pretty top heavy. If you want to try to get a deep sleeper, somebody that I think I've been targeting a little bit, I do like the Chris Godwin side of things going up against Atlanta, coming out of the slot there. Could see him getting peppered with targets. Rashad White been involved quite a bit in the passing game here too, but we've seen 11 targets. We've seen 7 targets. This is a big deal if I'm looking for some cheaper cards where, obviously Mike Evans was out for a lot of that football game, got injured very early on in the New Orleans game. You saw Chris Godwin take over, but Chris Godwin has kind of been the number one between the two. And I think Evans is $4.30 right now. So again, this is like should there be a $2 gap between Godwin and between Mike Evans? I don't think so. Look at our projections for them. Godwin sitting at 15.31 and Evans sitting at 16.95. So they're less than 2 fantasy points away from each other, but somehow they're $2 difference in price. These are the beautiful things about Reignmakers, and when you can go point per dollar and take advantage of things, you're in a really good spot. Now, the only guy to really bring up at tight end is Travis Kelce, $14.25, and Mark Andrews, so 2 guys. There are a couple lineups where I have Sam Laporta, who has been awesome, don't get me wrong, but $4.43, you can pair him with Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson goes nuts, obviously Mark Andrews is probably going to come along for the ride. It could be a Zay Flowers situation, but you're able to play wide receivers and you're able to play tight ends in this spot. So I don't think it's a priority by any means to have to get there. This is definitely something that I'll be looking to do more in my full lineup allotments where I have defensive players, kickers, things like that for the Thursday to Monday slate. But obviously for Monday, finding out if Christian McCaffrey plays football or not, that's going to matter. That's going to matter a lot, especially because, Skull in Minnesota, our team is not good. Anyway, that does it for me. DK Metcalf, if he ends up playing football, $2.90, way too cheap for him as well. I'll give you a little bit of love for him on the way out here. Oh, Jackson Smith and Jigba. That was the last guy that I have on my sheet. Buy him now and hope DK Metcalf is out. Oh, he's going to be 78 cents now. Oh, that's too bad. I got him for 70 though, just now Really good stuff, friends. Fun to always talk through the Reignmakers process. We have our projections here at Stochastic. We have our Reignmakers projections here at Stochastic. Use them to help inform your decisions in the Reignmaker streaks week in, week out, whether you use me or not. Again, it would be sad if you didn't. I'm here doing content because I love the Reignmakers product, love talking through it. And I think there's a lot of small edges that it still exist here. Buying low on players who haven't shown it out yet. Devontae Adams. I will have a lot of Devontae Adams, for better or for worse. It's not like his price can go down below $5. Just buy a lot of Devontae Adams. That's the moral of this story. But anyway, head down below, friends. Get yourself that starter pack if you haven't already. Get yourself exposure to the great projections that we have here at Stochastic, where you can basically point per dollar find out the best guys to get to. Again, there's franchise scores attached to the pack type, attached to everything. You can do it by position. Dirty joke. You can do it by team. We could sort by the highest projected players on the slate. Jalen Hurts, that shouldn't surprise anybody. Lamar Jackson, number 2. That is insane. Cooper Kupp, highest skill position player next to just above Tyreek Hill. But yeah, Cooper Kupp going to be my priority, as he should be yours. Let me know what you thought of the video down in the comment section below. Hit that like button for me. I will be back in week 8, per usual. Until then, friends, I'm Eric Lindquist. Best of luck in the DraftKings Reignmakers streets. Again, talking process, talking plays. Good stuff over here.